Hello there, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Melissa Lemon, and thanks for joining me today. I am going to talk a little bit today about my experience with PTSD. So, I have no idea how long this video is going to be. It could be 3 minutes, it could be 3 hours. My personal experience with PTSD is extensive. So, bear with me, and I'll just kind of go ahead and dive in. So, I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was about 31. And I remember the practitioner who diagnosed me, I remember her telling me that PTSD was actually really common in people who were kind of in my life circumstance. And I was like, that's really interesting. Also, I remember the second she said it, I just felt so much relief. And I think I felt so much relief because finally somebody had begun to validate my experience and how difficult this experience was for me and had been for me, and the impact that it had had on my life and on my psyche and on my heart and all the things. It was like the very first breath of air that I took in a really long time, honestly. And then becomes the unpacking all of that, right? Unpacking all of the trauma. So I just want to mention really quickly, probably the best book about PTSD, I believe, is The Body Keeps the Score by Besser van der Kolk. Hopefully I said that right. I'll put it in the description. But it's an excellent book to help people understand PTSD. And I think one of the most important things that book shows us is just how common PTSD is in our society today. We live in a very traumatizing world. And, when PTSD was kind of first discovered, it came about because of the experience of soldiers in war. And that's an interesting thing to think about. Like, a lot of us are having this war experience, even though we're not, in the military, active duty, fighting in combat. But the experiences that we're having in our day-to-day lives, in our society, are kind of causing a lot of us to have PTSD. And I would even say probably most of us in some way. So I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I had mentioned in a previous video that thinking I was okay, and then something else happened, and then not being okay again, and the impact of that was basically is called complex PTSD or compound PTSD, and it's basically PTSD on steroids. So PTSD is anxiety on steroids, and complex or compound PTSD is PTSD on steroids. So super impactful. It's super impactful on a person's life. It's super impactful on a person's brain. And I think that's something that's really important to understand, is that, brain scans show PTSD alters the brain. And so people literally begin to have a different lived experience once they have PTSD. They begin to see things different and experience things differently than they did before they had the PTSD. So that's something I think that it's important for people to understand. So, I've mentioned before that I have several anxiety disorders, and they all are, not fun in their own right, and PTSD is just a different animal. I'm not sure what order I'll be posting these videos in, but I'll talk about generalized anxiety at one point, which I would say is probably the worst of the anxiety disorders, besides PTSD, and PTSD just blows out of the water. It is just so not fun, especially the complex PTSD. So, what does it look like? What is it like to experience PTSD? It's hard to describe. And one of the big words that comes to my mind is triggers. And, when somebody experiences a trigger or a stimulus, all bets are off. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, how people are going to react. I'd say I still have that, not if I don't have a fear or a worry about it. Maybe I have a little bit of worry about it, just the possibility that I could be triggered and I could like, you know, fly off the handle. Even though my primary fight or flight technique is flight. I was going to say that, and then I was like, no, it's kind of turned with the complex PTSD. It's kind of turned into something different. So, you know, people have heard of fight or flight, and then it became fight or flight or freeze, and then fight or flight or freeze or friend, and you can look all of these up. And the last one, the last F, fight, flight, freeze, friend, and flop. And I started flopping, and I'm going to talk about that next because I was going to talk about it anyway. But so it's interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of movies or TV series I've watched that have just like, I've been like, oh my gosh, that's totally what it's like. So if you've seen the movie Unbroken about the track Olympic athlete Louis Zamperini, hopefully I'm saying that right. I was watching that movie. I love that movie. It's an excellent movie, and it just really portrays the PTSD so well. I think especially in this one scene where the person who had caused all this trauma in this soldier, he had gotten a reprieve from being around this, you know, this prisoner of war. I don't remember if he was a captain or whatever who was in charge, who was responsible for like, you know, giving commands, and he just really singled out this one guy, and it had given him a lot of PTSD. And there's this one scene where he's called the Bird, this captain in the other army. I think it's the Japanese, but I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. Anyway, and he is exposed again to this person who has caused this massive trauma in his brain, and he's standing in line with his other soldiers, and he literally just like faints. Like he just like, and I was like, oh my heck, that is totally what it's like. Like when your brain can no longer handle a trigger or something, it is like just, it is a very, for me, it has become a kind of a flop thing. And so certain stimuli will cause me to just kind of like go weak at the knees and like faint. I don't think I've ever lost consciousness, but and then there was another movie I also love the show Lark Race to Candleford, and there's a character in there called Minnie, and she's super awesome. But she has come, you know, to Candleford with all of this trauma from her childhood, and one of the traumas in her life is that her sisters one by one kind of disappeared, and she never knew what happened to them. They basically, you know, it's implied that they run away, but she never hears from them again. She doesn't know if they're okay. And in one episode, she's somebody else's sister is thinking of going away, and it is really triggering this trauma in her. And it gets to the point whenever she's like fretting about it, whenever she says the word sister, she like pretty much just passes out and is like asleep. And that is the flop response. It's different than freeze. Freeze is like frozen, I'd say frozen stiff, unable to act, and flop is like literally like your brain's just like shut down, and like you're gonna literally lose like strength and possibly consciousness. So anyway, so PTSD is pretty intense. 0 out of 5 stars, do not recommend. So I wanted to say there's hope for PTSD, and I wasn't able to say that with honesty. So this is my experience with PTSD. It's so severe, and it's so stark. I don't know that it ever goes away or heals completely, at least not in this life, because those triggers are so impactful on the brain. So what has helped me a ton is learning how to manage, learning how to identify, I want to say like rate and manage my triggers has been the most helpful for me. So I had an excellent therapist who was a hypnotist. I'm actually like not hypnotizable because anyway, I never like was under hypnosis, but I did EMDR with him, and it was excellent. EMDR is an excellent technique, but one of the things he talked about is how people who have PTSD, well, he compares it to real estate. So people say with real estate, like the most important thing is location, location, location. So with people with PTSD, the most important thing is safety, safety, safety. And 3 times is not enough. I can't emphasize that enough. It is so important for them to feel safe. and to feel safe from the things that trigger them, because who wants to, go anywhere with the possibility that they might like pass out or, maybe blow up if somebody's like, if fight is their response. So, so talking a little bit about safety. So I realized that certain things were triggering to me, and some were worse than others. And so I kind of came up with this scale of like a green light, yellow light, red light. Like green light is, I feel safe. I'm not really worried about anything. I'm okay to like move forward and do something or whatever. And then yellow is like, I don't know, it's kind of iffy. And red is like, no go. There's no way that's happening. And that is what I give to myself to feel safe. So it's interesting. This just came up, and so I'm going to mention this really quickly. I know a lot of people, I've met a lot of people who have had PTSD in some of the different opportunities and things that I've had in life. And I remember one person talked to me about a treatment that her therapist did where the therapist was like exposing her to the stimulus over and over again. It's a desensitization thing. And to my friend, like it really, even though it was super traumatic for her to do this therapy, it made sense to her and she thought it was a good idea. And I don't believe that's a good idea to continue to traumatize somebody who is already traumatized. I think that puts somebody at risk of having the complex trauma. That's just my, I don't know, my current opinion. My opinions are always open for change, but just knowing how difficult it is for somebody to get that safety back once it's lost, and to continue to put them in a place where they feel that vulnerability and that unsafety. I don't think that's a good idea, but that's just me. So I have red, and like if something to me is red, I'm like, no go. Like, and it's the way that I keep myself safe, and the way that I let, the people who love me keep me safe if they're willing to do that. So, and then with a yellow, what I kind of have, if I know there's going to be two stimuli in a certain situation, and that maybe they're both yellow, it's also probably a no-go. Like if there's a pileup of potential triggers, it's also a no-go for me. It turns, two yellows equals a red or whatever. So I kind of have this system. I know my triggers really well. I know what triggers me and what bothers me, and I just choose to keep myself safe. And that's just kind of how I deal with my PTSD. I just had the thought, I do feel like there is hope for PTSD. I feel like it's coming in the future. I don't think we have the treatments yet we don't have the treatments yet, and we don't have the world yet to provide that safety for victims of, I don't want to say any specifics, but for those of us who have really intense PTSD, I do not believe that we have a world yet that is capable of creating the safety that we need to completely heal from that. But I do believe the vibrations of the earth are rising, and I do believe that is coming at some point in the future. So that I do have hope for that. So how I just thought I need to add in there, how can we help? How can you help your loved ones if they have PTSD? Let them choose. Let them make choices about their environment, because that's huge. Remember, that's that safety. So if there's something in their environment that's triggering to them, eliminate that trigger. Help eliminate that trigger if possible, because that is huge. I want to mention really quickly, I talked about in another video the book First We Make the Beast Beautiful, and one of the things I loved about that book is she talked about how supportive her family was, and how she would go on vacation. I kind of remember the story of her going on vacation with her siblings, and how they were like, we know you have a lot of anxiety, and so we're going to let you get there first. We're going to let you pick out which room you want and things like that, because we know that kind of thing is important to you and helps you have a better experience and things like that. And just that kind of support is, I think, super helpful. So, excuse me. So, I'm trying to think of how else, like other ideas. Just supporting people in treatment. There are lots of different kinds of things that can help alleviate symptoms of PTSD, and just being able to support them, whether that's financially or giving them the time, maybe watching their kids or giving them the encouragement, whatever they need for treatment. I think with PTSD, like, spare no expense and get the treatment that you need because it sucks. So just being supportive in that way and helping them get the help that they need, and that's huge. Yeah, so that's I think that's all I had to talk about with PTSD. So yeah, it's a big one. It's hard to share this stuff and be vulnerable, and it's hard because I know that it's hard for people to understand. I also mentioned in one of my videos that there's a big difference between theory and experience, and kind of knowing theoretically or by the book what something is like versus experiencing it for yourself. It is night and day. And so I'm putting all these stories out there with a little bit of trepidation, and not really, because it's my YouTube channel. Like, if people don't like what I have to say on my YouTube channel, they can watch something else. So I'm really not worried about that. But it's something I've not been super vulnerable about with very many people in my life. And so if this video can help more people become a safe space for people that have PTSD, I think that would be an excellent benefit of this video. And so hopefully that is the case. I hope this video has helped you gain some insight and understanding and appreciation for the life experience that other people have, and maybe your own life experience. Maybe PTSD or complex PTSD is something that you suffer from. That could be something to think about, or somebody that you love, and maybe help you be more understanding and compassionate with yourself or with a loved one. And so that's all I have for today. Please let me know if you have any further questions about PTSD, and I will try to answer them. You can always contact me by email or through the comment section on my website, sunriseenergyhealing.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.